Welcome back. Tonight's story is about a quiet paralegal in Charleston who watched her sister stage manage their dying father's last months, never raised her voice once, and walked into the reading of the will holding a sealed envelope from 2007 that no one in that room knew existed. Pour the coffee, stay close. My sister spent 6 months turning our father against me. She did not know I was the one holding the original trust. My name is Eleanor Whitlock Pace. I am 41 years old. I work as a probate paralegal in Charleston, South Carolina, in a small firm above a bakery on Broad Street where the smell of warm sugar comes up through the floorboards every morning at 6. I have spent 18 years filing other people's grief into manila folders. I know what a will looks like when it has been tampered with. I know what a daughter sounds like when she is rehearsing a story she plans to tell a judge. And on the Tuesday morning, my sister called to tell me our father had passed in his sleep. I already knew which drawer in my office held the document that would undo every move she had made for the last 6 months. The kitchen clock read 7:14. My coffee had gone cold. Outside, the live oaks were dripping from an overnight rain, and the air smelled like wet brick and old jasmine. She was crying into the phone. I let her cry. I did not say a word about the envelope. If you have ever sat quiet while someone built a lie around you, tell me in the comments where you are watching from tonight. I want to know who is with me on this one. We grew up in a tall, narrow house on Trad Street, 3 blocks off the water, with a porch light that my mother left on every night until she died of pancreatic cancer the spring I turned 23. Our father, Hollis Pace, was a tax attorney who wore the same gray suit 4 days a week and a navy one on Fridays. He drank his coffee black, called every woman younger than him sweetheart, and believed that fairness was a kind of weakness most people grew out of by 40. My sister Margaret is 3 years older than me. Everyone called her Margot. She was the loud one, the bright one, the one who knew how to walk into a room and make the room rearrange itself around her shoulders. The house looked respectable from the sidewalk. Window boxes with white geraniums, a brass pineapple knocker on the door. Inside, the rot had a schedule. Sunday dinners at 5 sharp, a blessing my father did not believe in but insisted on. And after the plates were cleared, the lesson. There was always a lesson. I remember being 9 years old, standing at the dining room table while my father held up my report card and circled the 1B in red pen. He said the world does not hand out blue ribbons for almost. He said it the same way another father might say, I love you. Margot got an A on a spelling test that week, and he took her to the boat show in North Charleston and bought her a milkshake and a small brass compass. The compass became a thing in our house. It sat on her dresser for years. I was supposed to look at it and understand. The second memory is from the summer I turned 12. My mother was already sick, though we did not know yet how sick. Margot was 15, on the swim team, taller than me by a full head, and she had decided I was an embarrassment because I read at the dinner table. She told our father I had been stealing from her wallet. I had not. He did not ask. He took $20 of my babysitting money out of the jar on the kitchen counter and handed it to her in front of me and said, This is how we build character in this family. Margot did not even smile. She did not need to. She had already learned that the easiest way to get what she wanted was to make me look like the thief. I learned 3 things in that house before I was 13. Do not cry where they can see you. Do not argue when the verdict is already written, and keep copies of everything. My father got sick in late August of last year, pancreatic like our mother. He was 73. The diagnosis came back stage 4 on a Thursday, and by the following Monday, Margot had moved into the Trad Street house with 2 suitcases, a label maker, and a binder she called Dad's Care Plan. She told me on the phone that she was going to take the lead, since I had the busier job, and that I should focus on what I was good at, which was paperwork. She said it almost kindly. I said okay. I drove down from my apartment on Spring Street that night with a casserole and a small notebook, and I started writing things down. She had already moved his medications into a locked drawer. She had already changed the password on his email. She had already called his old friend at the bank and asked, in the sweet voice she uses on men over 60, whether anyone had been by recently asking about the accounts. 2 weeks later, she suggested gently, that since Dad was so tired, maybe we should think about getting his affairs in order. She said the word affairs the way you say the word picnic. Like it was a small, bright thing we could plan together. She said she had a friend who did estate work, a very nice man named Reed Calloway, and he could come by the house on a Saturday morning and just walk Dad through a few updates. She said updates, not changes, updates. I said that sounded fine. I did not tell her that I had pulled the 2007 trust out of our firm's archive on my lunch break 2 days earlier and put a clean copy in a sealed manila envelope in the locked drawer under my desk. I did not tell her that the original, the one with my father's wet signature and the court clerk's stamp, had been filed with the Charleston County Probate Office 16 years ago. I did not tell her anything. Take a breath. The hardest part of this story is the part where I had to pretend I did not see what was happening, because the only way the truth survives in a family like mine is if it survives in silence. The Saturday morning Reed Calloway came to the house. My father was in his blue corduroy chair with a wool blanket over his knees, and the room smelled like cold tea and the menthol rub Margot had been putting on his chest. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. His hands were yellow. He kept asking what day it was. Margot sat on the arm of the chair with her hand on his shoulder, and her voice pitched 2 notes higher than her real voice, the way she used to pitch it when she wanted something from our mother. She told him the new documents were just to make things simple for everyone. She said the word simple 4 times in 10 minutes. I counted. I sat on the love seat across from them with a cup of coffee I did not drink. There was $37 in my wallet and a folded copy of the 2007 trust in my bag. I watched my father, who had once memorized the South Carolina tax code for sport, squint at a page of new language he could not follow and put his initials in the wrong place twice before Margot guided his hand. Reed Calloway did not look at me. He had already decided which daughter mattered. When my father asked in a thin voice where I was in all of this, Margot leaned down to his ear and said, "Ellie is fine, Dad. Ellie has her own life. She does not need any of this. She has always been the independent one." And my father, who had spent 41 years telling me I was the one who could take care of myself, nodded. He nodded the way a man nods when someone finally gives him permission to put a heavy thing down. She told him I was fine. She told him I was independent. She told him I did not need any of this. Those 3 sentences became the wallpaper of the next 6 months. Every time I called the house, she repeated them back to me in different words. "You are so strong, Ellie. You have always been the independent one. Dad knows you can take care of yourself." I let her. I let her say it on the phone, at the hospital, at the grocery store on King Street, where we ran into our cousin in October, and Margot performed the entire script in front of him with one hand on my elbow. I did not correct her, not once. The 2007 trust was already filed. Filed trusts are not undone by a confused man initialing a fresh document in a corduroy chair. They are undone by court orders that require evidence Margot did not have and would never get, because the man who signed the 2007 trust had been clear of mind, alone in his office, on a Tuesday afternoon, and the only person in the room with him that day had been a 24-year-old daughter he had just hired as a summer paralegal. Me. He told me that afternoon that he was making me the trustee because Margot, in his words, loved attention more than she loved people. He told me to keep a copy somewhere safe. He told me that one day a storm would come through this family and the only thing that would matter was who was still holding the paper when the wind stopped. I was 24 years old. I did not understand any of it. I put the copy in a fireproof box under my bed and I forgot about it for 16 years. If you have ever had a sibling rewrite the family story while you stayed quiet, drop a 1 in the comments. I want to know I am not alone in this. What saved me, in the end, was not the trust. It was a woman named Della Frampton, 66 years old, my supervising attorney at the firm above the bakery. Della had buried 2 husbands, raised 3 sons, and once told a judge to his face that he was wrong about a case and walked out of his courtroom with her chin up. In the 3rd week of October, when I came in on a Monday morning with circles under my eyes, Della closed her office door and asked me one question. She asked, "Eleanor, who has the original?" That was all. Who has the original? I told her I did. She nodded once and said, then sit down and let her do her show. I sat down. I let Margot do her show. I did not call my father in November. Margot had been screening his phone, and when I did get through, she would put him on speaker so she could narrate. I drove past the Trad Street house twice a week and saw the lights on and kept driving. I went to work. I filed other people's grief into manila folders. I bought a small spider plant for my kitchen window because something in me needed a thing that was growing. I did not cry. I did not fight. I waited. My father died on a Tuesday in February. Margot called me at 7:14 in the morning. I drove down to the house. I sat through the funeral at the small Episcopal church on Church Street with my hands folded in my lap while Margot delivered a eulogy that referred to me twice, both times as her quiet little sister who had her own path. The casket was closed. The flowers were white lilies, which my father had hated. I did not correct that either. The reading of the will was set for the following Monday at 10 in the morning in Reed Calloway's office on Meeting Street, in a conference room with a long mahogany table and a window that looked out onto a courtyard with a dry fountain. Margot wore a black wool dress and her hair pulled back so tight it looked painted on. She had brought her husband, Brent, and her oldest son, who was 18, and already wearing his father's watch. I wore a gray suit and the small gold cross my mother had left me. I carried a leather portfolio. Inside the portfolio were three things: the 2007 trust, certified copy with the clerk's stamp, a printout of the filing record from the Charleston County probate office, time-stamped 2007, and a short letter in my father's handwriting, dated the same week, that began, "To whoever needs to read this when the storm comes." Reed Calloway opened the folder in front of him and cleared his throat and began to read the document Margot had walked our father through in his corduroy chair in September. He read for about 2 minutes. Then I lifted my hand, the way I have lifted my hand in courtrooms 100 times, and I said, "Mr. Calloway, before you continue, I need to put something on the record." He looked at me the way men like him look at women who interrupt. I slid the certified copy across the table. I said, "This trust was executed and filed 16 years ago. It names a sole trustee. The trustee is me. The document you are reading was signed by a man under hospice-level medication and constitutes a revocation attempt that, under South Carolina law, requires evidence of capacity that no one in this room can produce." I said it the way you read a weather report. Flat, clean, true. Margot's face did something I had been waiting 28 years to see. The brightness drained out of it in one slow blink. She said my name, just my name, Ellie. I let her say it. Then I turned to her, and I said the sentence I had been carrying since I was 12 years old, and she had taken $20 out of the jar on the kitchen counter and called it character. I said, "Margot, this is how we build character in this family." She did not answer. There was nothing to answer. Reed Calloway closed his folder. Brent stared at the table. The 18-year-old son looked at his mother for the first time the way a son looks at a stranger. I stood up. I gathered my portfolio. I walked out of the conference room, past the dry fountain in the courtyard, into the bright, cold February morning on Meeting Street, and I did not look back. If you have stayed with me until now, thank you. Tell me in the comments which line in this story landed somewhere in your own life. I drove home along the harbor with the windows cracked and the salt air coming in and my hands steady on the wheel. I thought about the 9-year-old girl who had stood at the dining room table on Trad Street while a red pen circled her almost. I told her out loud in the car that being unwanted by people who were already broken is not the same thing as being unworthy of love. I told her that the porch light her mother left on every night had not been for Margot. It had been for her. I told her that the quiet she had learned in that house was not weakness. It was the place she had kept the truth alive while the rest of the family rewrote it. The spider plant on my kitchen window has put out 3 new shoots since February. I water it on Sundays. I have not spoken to my sister since the reading. I do not know if I will. The 2007 trust did exactly what my father told me it would do on a Tuesday afternoon when I was 24 years old and did not understand any of it. It held. The wind stopped. I was still holding the paper. And the porch light, the one on Trad Street, the one my mother left on every night until the spring I turned 23, I drove past it one last time on the way home from Meeting Street. It was off. For the first time in my whole life, it was off. And I understood finally that I did not need it anymore.